This year marks the 60th anniversary of the historic March on Washington. And while we recall the images and the impact, we may not remember some of those who helped turn the dream into reality. Which brings us to Bayard Rustin.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivering his I Have a Dream speech. The sea of peaceful people, 250,000, black and white together. Say March on Washington, this is the snapshot history has saved from that August day in 1963. Now, look there, the man just behind Dr. King. He's Bayard Rustin. Who, you say? Bayard Rustin, the strategist who organized the march.
The executive director of the March on Washington, the man who organized this whole thing, Mr. Bayard Rustin.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first demand is that we have effective civil rights legislation, no compromise, no filibuster, and that it includes public accommodation, decent housing, integrated education, FAPC, and the right to vote. What do you say?
Everybody needs to know who this man is. He should be taught in every school.
George C. Wolfe is trying to make that happen. How do you think we should regard Bayard Rustin?
As an American hero who not only contributed heavily to one of the most significant, peaceful demonstrations that has ever happened in this country, but a man who also wrote the book on how to stage such an event.
Lord, I hope and pray they come today.
Wolfe is the director of Rustin. A producer of the film is Higher Ground, former President and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama's production company. The film stars Coleman Domingo as Bayard Rustin.
We are going to put together the largest peaceful protest in the history of this nation.
It tells the story behind the march. Officially, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This was the real office where Rustin and a small staff pulled the march together in less than 2 months. The Harlem brownstone called the Utopia Neighborhood Clubhouse.
You needed somebody with charisma to make you want to follow him. That was his gift.
Eleanor Holmes Norton, Washington, D.C.'s delegate in Congress, then a student at Yale Law School, was tasked with finding buses to bring people to the march.
What did it feel like that day?
It was the most gratifying day I can ever remember. Without him, there wouldn't have been the march. Without the march, there wouldn't have been the movement. Without the movement, you wouldn't have had the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act.
That's pretty big.
That's as big as it gets, I think.
The week after the march, there he was on the cover of Life magazine. Absolutely. So how could a man that important be marginalized? Walter Naegle was his partner for 10 years before Rustin's death in 1987 at 75.
Being gay was kind of like the nail in the coffin. So I think it had a tremendous impact on his ability to rise within the movements where he worked.
Here's the man who convinced Martin Luther King to embrace nonviolence as a tactic. Yes, Bayard Rustin.
Nobody knows the trouble I see.
That's Bayard Rustin, singing on an album of spirituals, and believe it or not, Elizabethan songs. He collected art, antiques, walking sticks. The same Bayard Rustin whose involvement in nonviolent protest got him beaten. He was arrested over 20 times, jailed, and it all cost him. But now, history has begun to take another look at Bayard Rustin.
To see somebody who could bring the kind of strategic sense that helped to organize some of the seminal moments in the early civil rights movement. To learn about someone like that did inspire me. Now, I have to make a very clear caveat here. I never was able to organize as good as he, but it did get me thinking about my own role as somebody who could maybe work at a grassroots level and change the country from the bottom up.
Bayard Rustin has been credited with coining the phrase, speaking truth to power. He did that all his life. In 2013, 50 years after the March on Washington, Bayard Rustin was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama.
Today we honor Bayard Rustin's memory by taking our place in his march towards true equality. What I thought was important, and Michelle and I, it's the reason that we were interested in this story, was this reminds us that the fight for justice is typically not just about one group of people or another group of people. It's often in tandem we have to figure out how do we lift up all people.
Walter Naegle, accepting on behalf of his partner, Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was a giant in the American civil rights movement. America honors Bayard Rustin as one of its greatest architects for social change and a fearless advocate for its most vulnerable citizens.
My hope is that he gets the credit that is due to him. And what I hope Rustin achieves is to remind this new young generation of activists how much they can accomplish.
This was symbolic of kind of bringing Bayard in from the shadows where he'd been for so many years and acknowledging his contribution.
Walter Naegle,